We are not the first species on Earth to cause climate change. Actually, the first pollutants were cyanobacteria. When you stand on the surface of the Earth, you stand atop a vast kingdom of microorganisms without which life on Earth as it is wouldn't even exist. Hello, Samson here. Welcome to today's segment of book reviews where we're reviewing Soul Will Save Us. This is by Kristin Ohlson. When you stand on the surface of the Earth, you stand atop a vast kingdom of microorganisms without which life on Earth as it is wouldn't even exist. So this is not another doom and gloom climate book. It's beautifully written, an exploration of how farmers, scientists, and even ranchers are actually discovering that healthy soil is the planet's most powerful carbon capture machine that we have working for us for free. And in today's segment, I'm going to break down 5 major lessons that I got from the book, diving right into it. The first lesson I'll share from the book is that we have lost half the carbon from our soil. A research done at Ohio State University by a soil scientist called Latan Lau, yes. Over the decades he spent actually studying soil was to look at how much carbon we've lost from the soil, and they got to understand that about 50%, and that was in Ohio alone, where 50% of carbon from the soil was lost. And in parts of the world where farming has been done for millennia, there is an 80% loss of carbon. Why does this matter? Simply because when carbon is lost from the soil, it just doesn't disappear. The law of physics that says that energy is not destroyed, simply converted from one form to another. So when carbon is lost from the soil, goes into the atmosphere, combines with oxygen, and then forms carbon dioxide, which is a major greenhouse gas. Now, the major culprit here is simply plowing, and also cause plowing a drastic perturbation that plants and soil organisms were never actually meant to handle. And the takeaway here is therefore that climate change is not just about fossil fuels, but how we treat the ground that is beneath our feet. The second lesson the book is bringing out is that soil is a living, breathing universe. The soil food web actually introduces the idea that when you get a teaspoon of soil, there is over 70 billion living microorganisms in there, inclusive of protozoa, fungi, bacteria, and nematodes. And all of these actually form what is needed in the soil. So the organisms don't just sit there. Instead, there is microbial activity that is happening. So you get to trade. So plants send the carbon sugars to them, and then when they go to the roots, they work them out. The microbial activity that takes place gets to give the plant back what it needs. And then plants actually get the carbon dioxide that is in the atmosphere, take it back. And then there is that whole loop actually that is happening. So an interconnectedness of a loop that is there is what actually gets to reduce the carbon that is there. So soil is not just dirt. Instead, it's a living system where when we use a lot of chemicals, we are not helping the living organisms down on our feet. The third lesson that we get from the book is the fact that bare soil starves the microbes, but carbon farming gets to feed them. The whole essence of carbon farming is simply that you need not to leave the soil bare. Instead, it's supposed to be a loop throughout the year of covering your soil. That could be with mulch, could be with cover crops, and could be no-tilling and like plant mob grazing, basically. The lesson and the takeaway is that you should never leave the soil bare. Instead, there is need to plant cover crops, mulch, and do all those things in order to promote microbial activity down the soil. The fourth lesson is that cows can heal land if managed correctly. So this is like one of the most controversial parts of the book, where the coming in of electric vehicles was simply that there is a lot of fossil fuel waste emissions from vehicles which are using fossil fuels, petrol, diesel, and the like. And there was a comparison that was done to agriculture, proclaiming that emission from cows was a contributing factor to the greenhouse gas emission that was there. When you look at it from a larger scale, you get to realize that it is actually the conventional farmers who were promoting the idea behind, no, we shouldn't have animals move about and graze about, simply because of selling chemicals. We sell chemicals to farmers, grow the produce that we need to grow for them, and then just go feed the cows in there. There is something that was actually done in Zimbabwe. A study, so to say, that was by Alan Sever. So a biologist. He actually spent some time watching the grasslands in Zimbabwe decay when the cattle were removed from the grazing area. And then he finally realized that traditional range management was somewhat backward. The problem wasn't that there were too many animals. Instead, it was the wrong pattern of grazing. So what he did is that he developed a holistic planned grazing where plants were able to, animals were able to graze and move about in like different paddocks, and then allow for the land to rest and regenerate. And the result here stunning in that the land was regenerated, and even some rivers which had dried up and stopped flowing were able to be recovered simply because of the holistic approach that he took there. And the lesson therefore behind this is simply that cows are not the enemy. Instead, poor management is. And if managed correctly, livestock can actually rebuild the soil and restore the carbon that has been lost. The fifth lesson, the final one, is simply that soil can reverse climate change faster than you could ever think and imagine. So this is like the climax of the book. Yes, so some scientists have calculated actually that the world's soil, which has been depleted up to about 80 billion or so of carbon, has been depleted from the soil. But the restoration could actually be done if we do it 3 parts per million. And a study at New Mexico University actually points to the fact that a molecular biologist, this is David Johnson actually, who was saying that when the study was done and some experiments conducted, healthy soil biology, that is using compost and using cover crops, plants began actually shuttling, and 72% of carbon was able to be pulled out from the air. And what is staggering is a conclusion that he actually draws up, that 11% of the world's cropland, that is land that is often fallow or degraded, were managed to build healthy soil that would offset all current anthropogenic carbon dioxide emissions. And the takeaway is we do not need to wait for futuristic technology to come about. The solution is already under our feet. Healthy soil can capture carbon at a scale that matters while growing more food, holding more water, and cleaning the environment. In conclusion, this is a good book that everyone who wants to fight the fight of climate change and the like should take some time to read. We are not the first species on Earth to cause climate change. Actually, the first pollutants were cyanobacteria, but unlike us, they created more life, not less of it. This was Kristin Ohlson's Soul Service. Till we meet in the next segment, I am checking out.